Type German Rottweiler puppies into any classified site right now, and you'll find breeders charging between $3,000 and $8,000 for dogs they're describing as authentic German imports or German line animals. Look at the actual paperwork. In a significant percentage of those listings, the dog was born in the United States, raised in the United States, and the German connection is a great-great-grandparent with a German-sounding name buried 6 generations deep in a pedigree document the buyer will never read carefully enough to catch. The term German Rottweiler is almost entirely unregulated in American commerce. Anyone can use it. Nobody checks. That's where this story starts. The Rottweiler's actual German connection begins in Rottweil, a town in Baden-Württemberg with Roman roots. The Roman 12th Legion established a settlement there in the 1st century, and the Mastiff-type dogs they brought with them, bred to manage cattle and guard supply lines across military campaigns, stayed after the Romans left. The local population bred those dogs into something specific to the region over the following centuries. A cattle-driving, cart-pulling, money-guarding animal that the town's butchers relied on so completely that the breed became known as the Rottweiler Metzgerhund, the Rottweiler butcher's dog. The money-guarding part was literal. Drovers returning from market tied their earnings in pouches around the dog's neck because robbing the dog required getting past the dog first. The railway killed the working function of the breed in the late 1800s as efficiently as it killed most working livestock driving in Europe. By 1900, the Rottweiler population had collapsed to the point that a single female was reportedly found at a Heilbronn dog show. The Allgemeiner Deutscher Rottweiler Club, the ADRK, was founded in 1921 to formalize and preserve the breed, and the standard they wrote became the most rigorous breed evaluation framework in the Rottweiler world. What the ADRK built, and what American breeding eventually moved away from, is the core of the difference between these two animals. What the ADRK actually requires: to breed a Rottweiler under ADRK registration in Germany, the dog must pass a series of evaluations that have no equivalent in American Kennel Club requirements. The Kurung, the breed survey, involves a certified breed warden assessing the dog's physical conformity to the standard, its structural soundness, and critically, its temperament under controlled pressure testing. The ZTP, the Zuchttauglichkeitsprüfung, is the breeding suitability test where the dog encounters threatening stimuli and its nerve stability is evaluated. A dog that shuts down, shows uncontrolled aggression, or demonstrates unstable temperament under these conditions is not permitted to breed. Beyond temperament, ADRK breeding dogs must have certified hip and elbow evaluations from an approved veterinary radiologist. The results are graded, and the grades are part of the breeding record. Hip dysplasia exists in German Rottweilers. The condition is widespread in large breeds, and no registry has eliminated it. But the mandatory screening means German breeding animals are cleared individuals with documented joint health. The American Kennel Club recommends but does not require hip certification for Rottweiler breeding. Recommends. The working title requirement sits underneath all of this. ADRK breeding dogs are expected to hold at minimum ABH, the Begleithundprüfung, a traffic sure companion dog certification, and serious breeding programs push further into IPO and Schutzhund titles. The logic is identical to what serious Doberman and Malinois breeding communities apply. If the purpose of the breed includes protection work, then the breeding program should demonstrate protection work capability before producing the next generation. Removing that requirement doesn't just affect temperament, it removes the selection pressure that has historically distinguished the working Rottweiler from a large dog that happens to look like one. What the AKC actually requires nothing comparable. A Rottweiler can be registered with the AKC, shown at confirmation events, and bred without ever being evaluated for temperament, working ability, or verified joint health. Confirmation, how the dog looks standing still in front of a judge, is the primary metric the show system rewards. Confirmation and working temperament are not the same quality, and in the absence of working evaluation requirements, breeders selecting purely for show success will eventually produce a dog optimized for show success. That's not an accusation, it's just what selection pressure does when pointed in a single direction. The American Rottweiler boom of the late 1980s and 1990s illustrates this clearly. The Rottweiler became the #1 most registered breed with the AKC for several years running during that period, a commercial explosion driven by the breed's reputation for protection that produced exactly the kind of breeding environment where reputation and reality diverge. High demand, fast supply expansion, reduced scrutiny over individual breeding pairs. The rescue communities that formed in the wake of that boom reported temperament inconsistencies and health problems in American-bred animals at rates that the working dog community attributed directly to the collapse of breeding standards during peak demand. The physical differences German Rottweilers bred under adrk standards tend to be more compact. The breed standard calls for males between 61 and 68 centimeters at the withers. The bone structure is substantial without being exaggerated. The head is broad and the muzzle is deep. The jaw carries the leverage it needs to produce the force the breed is known for. The body is slightly square in proportion, built for sustained work rather than imposing visual scale. American-bred Rottweilers in show lines frequently run taller and longer in the body. The head can be less substantial in poorly bred lines, a consequence of prioritizing overall visual elegance or sheer size over the structural ratios the adrk standard enforces. Some American breeders have moved toward what they call a blockier or more European look, which is a market response to demand rather than a systematic breeding standard. It produces variation, not consistency. The marketing terms that mean nothing: Roman Rottweiler, King Rottweiler, Rare XXL Rottweiler. These are marketing designations for oversized dogs, animals that exceed the adrk size standard and are, in the German system, disqualified from breeding specifically because oversize correlates with elevated orthopedic stress. The adrk disqualifies dogs above the height standard. American breeders charge premium prices for them. The tail tells you something. Germany banned tail docking in domestic dogs under the Tierschutzgesetz, the Animal Welfare Act, in 1998. A Rottweiler legally bred and raised in Germany has a full tail. This is not negotiable or optional. A German Rottweiler being sold in the United States with a docked tail is either a dog that was docked illegally before export, or more commonly, a dog that was born in the United States and marketed with the German descriptor regardless of its actual breeding background. The tail is not a definitive test. Some legitimate German imports were docked before the 1998 prohibition, and American dogs with full tails exist. But a docked tail on a high-priced German animal is worth asking about directly. What legitimate German lineage actually looks like. A genuine adrk-registered Rottweiler has a Kurung certificate, a ZTP pass on both parents, certified hip and elbow grades on both parents, and working titles documented in the pedigree. Asking for it is not unreasonable when a breeder is asking $7,000. The breeders who don't want that question asked are the ones whose answer to it is 6 generations of German-sounding names and a dog that has never been evaluated for anything except how it looks in a photograph. The Rottweiler that drove cattle through Rottweil, that guarded a drover's money pouch, that the adrk spent a century trying to preserve in its working form. That dog still exists. Finding it requires knowing what the paperwork should say, and knowing that most of what gets sold as its equivalent is something built around its reputation rather than its substance. The price is roughly the same. The dog is not.